It's just an ordinary chocolate chip cookie. Or is it? Using a specific technique, I've engineered a cookie with a unique, candy crisp, almost glassy outer shell, while still maintaining a dense, moist interior. Here's how it's done. You can use whatever chocolate or other flavorings you'd like. I'm using a combination of this 72% dark chocolate bar, 60% dark chocolate chips, and semi sweet chips. But again, feel free to mix and match different options here. Whatever combination you go with, you'll want a total of about a half a cup, 130 grams of chocolate. I'll chop up this bar and then set aside with the chips while we start on the dough. And here comes the secret to these cookies. We're going to beat the egg whites into a meringue before we add it to the dough. I've got one large egg here. I'll separate the yolk from the white, put the yolk aside, and add the whites into a metal mixing bowl. To help stabilize the foam, we'll be adding this cream of tartar, otherwise known as potassium bitartrate or potassium hydrogen tartrate or tartaric acid. It's a byproduct of fermenting grapes into wine, and it's often used in baking as a way to speed up the creation of egg foam as well as helping to stabilize those structures once created. It will also lend a very mild acidity to the cookies, which I think is quite pleasant. Just a dash will do, or about an eighth of a teaspoon if you want to be precise about it. I'll beat these on high speed for 1 to 2 minutes, or until we reach the stiff peak stage, where the egg white is able to hold its shape, like so. From here, we'll begin incorporating about a quarter of our total sugar into the egg whites, a little bit at a time so as not to collapse the foam. This recipe calls for 1 cup of sugar, so I have a quarter cup, 50 grams of white sugar here. The rest will get creamed in with the butter later. Once the sugar has been beaten into our foam, we'll set aside, and in a large mixing bowl, we'll add 1 stick, 113 grams of softened butter, or slightly melted butter. It'll be fine, I think. Now we'll beat in 3/4 of a cup, 165 grams of brown sugar. Using more brown sugar will result in chewier cookies as opposed to more white sugar, which would give us a crispier texture. You can play around with the proportions to suit your taste, just as long as you use 1 cup, about 120 grams of sugar in total. Creaming the sugar into the butter at this stage will also help to lighten the cookies, as the tiny sugar crystals help to whip air into the butter, giving us a lighter, creamier consistency. After creaming for a few minutes, the mixture should look something like this. Now we'll add the reserved egg yolk as well as our egg white foam, along with a generous glug of liquid vanilla, about 2 teaspoons or 8 grams. Once combined, it's time for the dry ingredients. First up is 1.5 cups, about 230 grams of bread flour. Using bread flour will give us a slightly chewier, denser cookie thanks to its added protein content, but if all you have is all-purpose flour, that'll work too. Next, I'll add half a teaspoon, 3 grams of baking soda, 1 teaspoon, 5 grams of baking powder, and 3/4 of a teaspoon, 5 grams of kosher salt. If you're using unsalted butter, I would up that to a full teaspoon. That might seem like an excessive amount of salt, but trust me, it's not. A little extra salt really helps to elevate basically any chocolate dessert. Without it, it would taste flat and a little bland. With the dry ingredients in, we can mix on medium speed until everything is incorporated. Actually, before I forget, I'm also going to add about a tablespoon of malted milk powder. This is optional, but it will bring a subtle, nutty, caramelized flavor to the cookies. Now, depending on a million different variables, including everything from the humidity to the grind on your brand of flour, you'll probably need to add extra flour here to get this dough to the right consistency. You want it to be moist, but just barely sticky. If your dough is too wet, the cookies will spread out too much in the oven and turn into crepes. Too dry, and the cookies will be hard and crunchy instead of moist and chewy. This looks about right to me. I'll add in the chocolate, mix that in, and begin forming into balls. This dough should yield about 16 normal cookies, or 8 to 10 big thickens, if that's what you're into, which I am. Once these have been rolled out, we're now ready to bake. Or are we? You could bake these now, but if you prefer taller, thicker cookies, like I do, you'll want to thoroughly chill the dough first. So I'll throw this whole baking sheet into the freezer. The fridge would also work, and let this dough firm up for at least 2 hours, or overnight would be even better. Chilling the dough allows the butter to firm back up, which will help delay spreading in the oven. After a few hours in the freezer, our cookie balls are rock hard. I'll throw them into my oven that's been preheated to 400F 205C. Then I'll back the heat down to 350F 176C. Starting the cookies in a hotter oven will aid in browning, as well as, again, delaying how much they spread. Let those bake for anywhere between 8 to 14 minutes, depending on how large you rolled your balls. Then remove once they reach your desired level of doneness. After about 12 minutes, these cookies are looking perfect. I'll remove from the oven, set on a wire rack, and allow to cool for at least 10 minutes before devouring. In the meantime, if you're enjoying this video, maybe consider liking and subscribing to this channel. But hey, don't do it for me. Do it for the beans. Now back to our cookies. They've sufficiently cooled, so let's try a bite. You can see how thick and moist and chocolatey they are, but what really stands out is the texture here. They're so crispy, bordering on glassy, like you might break a tooth on these. But it immediately gives way to a rich, decadent interior. It's truly unlike any cookie you've ever had before. But don't take my word for it. Try these for yourself and let me know what you think. And as always, let me know what my next recipe should be. Until next time.
Is this good?